So now in order to save the link document in the database, we need to create a function which will be called when the user clicks on the button from within the shorten URL module. And that function receives the name and the long URL which the user entered. So for this, let's head back to the project, and within the accounts page, the accounts screen, we are going to create the function over here, and then it's going to be forwarded to the shorten URL module via props. So we can name the function as handle create shorten link. I think that's way too lengthy, but doesn't matter. So it's going to get the name and the long URL via the arguments, and from within this function we will be making the request to save the entire document in the database. And for this, we first need to structure the document, as we just have the name and the long URL. Let's pass them right away, the way that they are received. For the other fields, which includes the created ad, shortcode and total clicks, let's add them. We don't have to pass in the ID, as that's going to be the document ID. So let's add in the created ad. Now for the created ad, we need to have the timestamp when the document is actually being added to the database. So instead of using the new date in such a way, there's actually a field value that the Firebase provides, and it's the server timestamp. So this field value gives us the timestamp of the actual action, like when the action actually happens in the database, whether you are updating a document or you are creating a document. So we are going to use this one instead of the new date which we used for the dummy data. So in order to use the field value, that field value actually exists on the app, the actual app that we have within the Firebase. So over here, for instance, we have the app.firestore.field value, then the server timestamp function. So it's actually a static method, and in order to have the same thing in the accounts page, we need to export the app from within this file. Let's do that. Let's pass in the app, and now in the account page we can import the app as well. And now on the created ad, we can use app.firestore.field value and the server timestamp, which is a function, so we need to call it. Then we just order them in the right way. So then we need to add in the short code for the short code of the link, and for that we will be using a third-party package called NanoID. So again, as I said earlier, that if you have used the UUID package, it's pretty similar to that, and it just allows us to, like, it gives us a randomly generated text and we can use it for the short code. As you can see, it gives us something like this when executed, like it's going to give us the function. And by the way, it's a named import, so that's something to keep in mind. And when we call this function, it gives us this thing. So I don't really think that's small. I think they should be providing any sort of like way to reduce the size usage. Okay, so there we have it. So that's perfect. That's exactly what we need. So I think we just need to call the function with the number value, the amount of letters that we need. So let's do that. So the first thing is we need to install the package, and it's yarn add nano id as such, or you can do npm install nano id. It's going to take a couple of seconds, and now that it's done, let's take a look. There we have the nano id. So now we can import the function. Let's do that. And it was actually the named import. So let's just test it out. We can call this function right away and let's pass in. So how many letters should we use? Well, I think 6 should be enough. Let's take a look. Open the console and okay, that's looking perfect. Alright, so now we just need to call this function for the field value of shortcode. Let's do that. And the last thing is the total clicks, which should be 0 by default. So now that we have the structure of the document, we just need to save it in the database. So for that, we also need to get the Firestore from the same, well, not from here, from the Firebase file, this thing. And now we can add the document. Let's do that. And at the same time, we need to create this function to be asynchronous by adding in async over here, just so that we can use the await. So let's take the response. So we will be awaiting the request where on the Firestore we have the collection. So this is the top level collection and it's the users. Then we need to provide the document, for which as I said that we are going to use the user UID, and we need to have the user object for that, which I think we have in the app component over here. So instead of forwarding this object to the accounts page, we can actually get the same thing by using the auth service from Firebase. So let me just log it to the console. So within the auth, we have the current user and the UID in such a way. If we do that and if we take a look, as you can see, it gives us the UID. So we will be using it for the field value of, well, not the field value, for the document ID, the document inside the users collection. Let's do that. And then we need to tap inside the sub collection, which is we again need to use the collection, and it's the links. And now within this collection, we need to add the document, for which we can use the add method and we can pass in the link in such a way. So now if we do that, well, let's just take a look. Let me just open the console, kill the terminal, this one. All right, so now I think, well, we actually need to forward this function to the modal first. So over here we can pass it with the name of create shorten link, and it's the handle create shorten link that we have over here. And now from within this modal, let's first destructure the prop, and we need to call it when the user clicks on the button, but we also need to pass in the name and the long URL. So for this, I think like we can do it by passing in the anonymous inline function, like over here on the on click, but that's going to make it look messy. Let's create a function instead, like inside this modal, and we can name it as handle submit. So this won't be receiving any props, like any arguments, as we have the things that we need right over here. So we just need to call the create shorten link, and we can pass in the form dot name and the form dot long URL. The other reason why I shifted this thing, like instead of the inline anonymous function, like instead of adding it over here in such a way, is because eventually we may also need to add in certain validation that, like, if whether or not the name or the long URL, like they are not empty, just to ensure that. So now we just need to call this function when the user clicks on the button. Let's do that, and I think that's it. All right, the other thing is, from within the function, the handle create shorten link inside the accounts page, we can close the modal at the same time when this request is completed. And we can do that because we have the state value for the modal right over here. So we just need to call this function with the value of false. So now if we save it and if we take a look, let's test it out, and we're going to fix this real soon. So let's just pass in the name to be website, and let's do that, website.com. If we click on it, well, that didn't turn out to be good. Add document called with invalid data, unsupported field value found in long URL. Well, that's strange. 1 second. So .long URL. Okay, just a second. That's strange. Okay, so I think I made a mistake over here. We are calling this function and we are passing the name and the long URL, which is okay. I made a typo. It's long URL in short case. So I think for you it may have worked, because let's just test it out. And if I click on it and if the Moodle gets closed, it means the request was completed. And at the same time, as we do not have any errors, we should be seeing the document being added. If we head back to the emulator suite and if we click on the go to emulator, and there we have it. So that's perfect. We have the users collection, then we have the user document with the respective user UID, and then the links sub collection, and then the actual link document. So that is perfect. As you can see, we have all the fields, the created art, because we used the server timestamp. It's working perfectly fine. At the same time, we have the name, long URL, the shortcode looking good, and the total clicks of 0. So that's perfect. It means that now we can actually save the links in the database. So the next step would be to actually get those links and to show them over here for the respective authenticated user, like all the links that they created. So let's do that.